Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. I've got an amazing guest on today, US Olympic athlete Tim Burke, who is now the Director of Athletic Development. Is that right? For the United States Biathlon team, which is pretty awesome. You've been in the Olympics 4 times, is that right?
4 times, yep.
And then probably more matches and competitions than you could ever remember.
Yeah, a couple hundred World Cups and many races before that.
That's awesome. Well, as a shooter and shooting instructor, hunter, guy that wants to hit targets, I've always been fascinated by you biathletes' ability to like sprint across snow on skis and then hit little tiny targets with rimfire rifles. So I'm sure people talk about this or ask a lot when you guys, or you in specifically is being interviewed, but how do you do it? I'm just kidding. That's a pretty broad question. You grew up, you're in Lake Placid now, so you're on the biathlon team.
Yep.
And that's where you grew up. How did you get into the biathlon?
Yeah. So I grew up in a really small town just outside of Lake Placid called Paul Smiths.
Okay.
And basically grew up in the middle of nowhere. No, nearest neighbors a half mile away. And as a kid, I just spent a lot of time outside on skis, playing in the outdoors. And I always loved to shoot from a pretty young age, just, starting with a BB gun and a pellet gun, working up to a 22. And I loved to ski too. And I was fortunate enough to live in the Lake Placid area. So I would come over to Lake Placid to do ski training and ski races. And as I was doing that as a kid, I would always be skiing by the Biathlon range here at the old 1980 Winter Olympic site. And, often I would see local biathletes out there training. And I knew right when I saw that, and I was probably about 12 years old, I saw that and said, hey, I get to ski around and shoot things. Sign me up. How do I do this?
So biathlon, why the hell are people, and I've done a little history search, but it seems like there's different discussions on it. Why ski and shoot rifles?
Yeah, it's a great question. The sport definitely has its roots in the military. Okay. So it was a real natural for the Scandinavian countries to have that as part of their military, right? Lots of snow. They needed to shoot. So it developed in Scandinavia, and first was more of a military sport, but now is there's still definitely a strong military presence, I would say, in the sport, but it's much broader than that as well.
One of the things I read said that like a particular unit used it as like a training or a test where they'd make the soldiers, or like, I think one thing I read is that they were like border patrolmen, and they made them ski the loop and have to shoot. And
it was definitely, especially again in places like Finland, it was definitely a big part of what they were doing there and how they were training soldiers. And I think, from there, it obviously just grew a lot, and now it's something that's done really worldwide.
One thing I was really surprised to read about is in Europe, I think Germany, I was reading about specifically, it said in Germany, the biathlon is viewed on TV and viewed by the public kind of like we would look at the NBA playoffs or something like that. Like everybody does it. But here in the States, people are like, the biathlons for the Winter Olympics. And
it's definitely something a lot of people here in the States don't realize about the sport. It's obviously pretty small here in the States with not too many competitors, but it is a massive sport in Central Europe. It is the number one winter televised sport in Central Europe. There's tens of millions of live TV viewers for each event. At the World Cups themselves, you get 20, 30,000 spectators pre-COVID, 20, 30,000 spectators there at the venues watching the races. So it's definitely has a very, very different feel competing over there compared to competing in the US. And, those athletes that are successful in Europe are real real stars, real sports stars in their home countries.
Do you feel like a star?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it was funny kind of at the height of my career. At home, people knew who I was and what I was doing locally, but no one would recognize me around the US. But when I was over in Europe, definitely it was a little bit different.
It is Tim Burke.
Yeah.
Now, you married a German gal that is also a biathlete. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So my wife is formerly Andrea Henkel, now Andrea Burke, was one of those biathlon stars in Germany. She really shows me up, a lot more accomplishments than myself, but I can live with that. And she's actually lives here now with me in Lake Placid. So okay. she wanted to get away from it all, so she moved over here where no one knows her.
So if you guys went out today, grabbed your rifles and skis, who would win?
Well, I don't know if she's gonna listen to this podcast. That answer might have to be different, but no, she has remained super, super fit. I definitely do more shooting than she does now. And the funny thing was, even when we were both competing, obviously you're competing in different classes, but we would train together and we would shoot together. She was one of the best shooters at the time, and she would agree with me here. I had an edge on her in training. I could definitely hold my own with her in training. She was one of the few athletes, the special athletes, that actually really had a knack for rising to the occasion and shooting better in a competition than she did in training, where majority of athletes, right, are usually come down a notch when it's competition time. And I was one of those.
What did she attribute that to? I'm sure I spoke about that often.
Yeah, she had a super strong mental game, and it was something that was pretty honestly natural for her. And one of the biggest things I think that contributed to that success for her was she was able to really let go of things. So biathlon's a wild sport, right? You've got conditions can play a big part of it. From one day to the next, you can have these really big ups and downs. On the World Cup, you can literally one day finish, be 80th place, and the very next day have another race and be on the podium. But you can only do that if you're able to quickly rebound from a bad race, because bad races in biathlon.
Mentally, you're talking about.
Yeah, mentally, I'm talking about. You see with a lot of athletes, and I definitely struggled with this at times, when you have a bad race, you just can't let it go, and you let it kind of eat at you, and you kind of bring that into the next competition. She never did that. She was able to, have an off day and say, that was, I'm better than that, and come back and really make the most of her next opportunity.
That's kind of an analogy for life right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just let it go and go on. Talk to the folks about, and I learned a lot the last couple of days researching some of this stuff before we spoke, but the game itself. So the cup is kind of like soccer. There's the games all around the world, or
yeah.
Ahead.
So, a lot of times at home here, I would get asked after the Olympics, people would say, "Oh, what are you going to do the next 4 years?" Right. And there is a World Cup schedule that happens every single year. There's a World Championships that happens every single year besides an Olympic season. And that World Cup schedule is mostly in Europe, and usually starting in Scandinavia, coming down to Central Europe, typically some competitions in Russia and sometimes Asia as well. But it's a total of 9 different stops during the winter. And at each of those 9 stops, there's on average 3 races. So it's a pretty busy winter schedule full of racing. And then you add a World Championships on top of that.
And so you get a score for each of those stops. And I think I read that the Olympics used to be part of the aggregated score. If you were an Olympic racer.
Yeah, that's correct.
There's probably nobody at that level that wasn't in the Olympics, I'm guessing. Is there anybody that's
that's a good point to bring up. Believe it or not, this is going to sound crazy. The toughest competition is at the World Cup. The reason for that is some of the bigger biathlon countries, so a country like Norway or a Germany or a Russia, who have a lot of strong biathletes, can start more athletes in a World Cup race than they can in the Olympics. And some of those athletes that they have to sit at the Olympic Games are potential medal contenders. My wife is a great example of that. In 2006, she, was competing for Germany at the Olympics. She got one race, and her first race, she was fourth place. So clearly a medal contender, but it wasn't good enough for the German team. She had to sit the next race.
Wow, that's crazy.
Now, with that said, the Olympics is obviously still incredibly competitive, and you have every athlete is so focused on that event that you're typically going to see the best from those athletes at that event.
You silver in the World Cup. Is that what I read?
Silver in World Championships in 2013.
There's too many different. I literally, as I read through all this, I'm sure for you, it's like the nomenclature and all of the different events. It's been such a part of your life for so long. It just rolls off the tongue, or right comes to the top of mind. So that event that you silvered in, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so that was the World Championships in 2013 in Novo Mesto, Czech Republic. And I had been building up to that result for a while. I had some World Cup podium results. I, at one point, had reached we call the yellow bib on the World Cup, which is for the number one ranked person in the world at that time. And in 2010, I had that for a little bit of the season. Wasn't able to keep it to the end. But my results had been building, and I still hadn't had any championship medals. So no Olympic medals, no World Championship medals. And things really just came together for me there in 2013. Actually, I'd gotten off to a really rough start at those championships, but was able to rebound with some really solid shooting in biathlon. There's different types of races. So some of the races favor skiing a little bit more, and some of them favor shooting a little bit more, where there's just a greater penalty for missed shots. And the race that I won the silver medal in was the race that favors shooting the most. So I just, things came together on the range, had a really good showing. And it's definitely a result I'm very proud of.
That's awesome. Let's talk with the listener viewers a little bit about what a race looks like, so that when we start talking about the physicality, they have an understanding. So you're skiing, and there's stations that you go to do shooting. And correct me if I'm wrong. You have to shoot prone in some, standing in some. Prone, it's about 1.5 inches, in like 3/4 target. There's 5 of them. You get 5 shots. If you miss, there's a penalty. And then on standing, it's about a 4.5-inch target. And there's so many specifics, like about what the gun can touch when you're prone and when you're standing. Like you can't ball up some snow and put the gun in the.
I wish. No, that was a good explanation. So yeah, with biathlon, there's different events within it. So the most kind of common race it's called the sprint race. It's really a horrible name because there's nothing sprinting about it. It's 10 kilometers long. But
it's a shorter one though, right?
Exactly. Besides a relay race, that is our shortest event for men, and it's 7.5K for women. So in the 10-kilometer sprint race, you start, you ski, it's about a 3.3 kilometer loop. You come into the shooting range, and the first time you shoot from the prone position. So you have 5 shots for 5 targets at 50 meters. And like you said,
skis stay on.
There's a mat. There's different points. You can pick any point you want to go to. The targets are all set to the prone position. And that prone target, each one of those targets is about 1.7 inches across. So fairly small. But you lie down on the mat, skis stay on, your poles come off, but skis stay on. Take the rifle off your back. You ski the whole time with your rifle. You have little straps, kind of looks like a backpack.
It's unloaded while you're skiing, right?
Unloaded while you're skiing. Yep. So you hit the mat, lie down, rifle comes off your back, you load a mag. You've got 5 shots for these 5 small targets. And it takes, on average, for like a world-class competitor, it'll take under 30 seconds to
fire all 5.
From the time you touch the shooting mat. So you touch the shooting mat, you have to get down, take the rifle off, load it, shoot 5 shots, put it on your back, and leave the mat. Takes under 30 seconds.
30 seconds. So like a NASCAR Formula One pit stop, in and out, 30 seconds instead of changing tires here. Now, if you miss, there's a penalty, right? It's not just a time penalty. You got to go do work. Yeah,
exactly. So for each miss that you have in that sprint race, before you can head back out onto the ski course, you have to ski a 150-meter penalty loop. And those penalty loops on average take about 25 seconds to ski. And back to the targets, you can hit the target anywhere on the target as long as it's a hit. So it doesn't matter if you're shooting a 10 ring or a 9 ring. If you hit the target, it'll go down, and you know instantly. So it's a black target. As soon as you hit it, some are electronic, some are mechanical, but as soon as you hit them, they will turn white. So you know right
or something. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And then you head back out after you do your penalty loops, or after you hopefully get to ski right by the penalty loop. You head back out on course. The rifle's back on your back. You ski that same 3.3K loop again, and you come into the range again, except this time you'll shoot from the standing position. And with the standing position, the targets are a little bit bigger, about 4.5 inches across, but same deal. You ski up to the mat, you drop your poles, you take your rifle off your back, you switch mags, and you shoot your five shots. This time in standing, the average times are a little bit quicker. So on the World Cup, you'll see around 25 seconds because you don't have to get down and get up. So everything happens just a little bit faster. And same thing again, if you miss any shots before you get to head out onto your last loop, you have to ski this penalty loop of 150 meters. Once you're done with that, you ski your final loop, and into the finish you go. So for a 10-kilometer sprint race, you're looking at times, depends quite a bit on the snow conditions and the course, but around mid 20s, so 24 to 27 minutes, something like that.
Wow. So you guys, I think I read an article that was tracking the average speed of skiers in biathlon, like over the last 50 years, and it's going up because people are becoming better athletes, and refining skis probably helps too. I think I read it was about 25 kilometers an hour you're skiing at on average. Is that right?
It's pretty quick, and you're right. Those times are getting faster and faster. I think training's getting better, but also the equipment has changed quite a bit. Skis play a really important factor in the race. When I would go to a World Cup event, I would show up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 pairs of skis, and it have
holy smokes.
Yeah, and we'd have a whole group of ski technicians that travel with us that are there to try and find the best wax to put on your skis. It's a real big part of the game.
So you're optimizing for the snow on site, temperature, all that, different friction coefficients.
Yeah, exactly. So whether the snow is natural or it's man-made, the temperature, and it's not just the wax on the ski, but it's also what we call the structure in the ski. So for example, if you're skiing in really wet, sloppy snow, you need a bigger structure on the bottom of that ski that's going to help you kind of shed some of that water. Whereas if you're on really cold, squeaky snow, you want that ski to be really kind of shiny with very little structure in it.
I see. That's interesting. I did a little math. That's like running a 4-minute mile. That speed is about 15 miles an hour if you convert it to miles per hour for us North Americans. And you're doing that for 30, 40 minutes straight in some of these races. I'm sure some of the spots you're going slower uphill, and then some downhill. You guys look like you're cooking in some of those downhill sections.
Yeah, you really get cranking in some of those downhills, which is always interesting with a rifle on your back too, right? It's one thing to go down on skis when you don't have a rifle on your back, but it's no fun to take a tumble when you've got a big metal bar hanging above your head.
Yeah, for real. I'm sure there's been some nasty accidents.
Yeah, there absolutely has. But in general, compared to, say, alpine skiing, we're pretty lucky that Nordic skiing is a fairly injury-free sport.
Do you Nordic or Alpine ski as well?
I do. Yeah. I grew up Alpine skiing as well. And still really enjoy doing that. I enjoy it more now than ever. I really do appreciate getting that ride up the hill now compared to having to do it myself.
2 types of skiing are allowed: classic and freestyle. What does that mean?
In biathlon now, we only do the freestyle technique. Well, technically you can do whatever you want.
But you're only doing freestyle because
we're only doing freestyle. So yeah, freestyle skiing looks more like ice skating.
That's
right?
That's what I thought it was describing.
Yeah. So it's called skate skiing, and you're
pushing off the snow.
Yep. You're pushing to the side. Whereas in classic skiing or traditional Nordic skiing, it's more of like a running style, right? And you're pushing straight back.
Kind of like the Nordic track.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So traditional skiing, is like the Nordic track. What we do in biathlon is all skate skiing, and it's just a faster technique. It also is a lot more comfortable skiing with the rifle on your back because you're not bending over so much at the waist, which is pretty uncomfortable if you're carrying a rifle.
I got it. Okay. So the sprint is the short one. You've got longer races and then like relay medleys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the other races we have in biathlon we have the pursuit race. So that happens after the sprint race, and it's based off of your results. So if you finished in 20th place and you were 40 seconds behind the winner in that pursuit race, you're going to start in 20th place, 40 seconds behind the winner. And it's just the first person to cross the finish line wins. And in that race, the loop is shortened to 2.5K for men, 2K for women. And you have 4 different shooting stages. So you go out, you ski your loop, you shoot from the prone position. Same thing. If you miss, you have to do penalty loops. You ski another loop, prone position, another loop standing, loop and finish. Then we have the mass start race where the best 30 people in the field start together. So you all start at the same time. The skiing's a little bit longer. The total length is 15 kilometers for men, 12.5 for women. And same thing, you shoot 4 different shooting stages. So a prone, standing with penalty loops. And then we have the individual race, and that is our longest race and the one that favors shooting the most. So for men, it's 20 kilometers long, women 15 kilometers. And this one, instead of skiing a penalty loop, if you miss a shot, you just immediately have 1 minute added to your overall time.
Okay.
And in this race, you also shoot 4 different stages, so a total of 20 shots. So you have the potential of incurring 20 minutes of penalties with a really horrible day.
So that's when you're talking about how you can go from kicking butt to 80th. It's just a couple misses and you're screwed.
Yeah, a couple of misses today on the World Cup. You just can't afford that. Everyone at the top is going to not miss any targets, or maybe they're missing one, but you just can't afford many misses. And if, it happens, everyone has a bad stage, or you can come in and, we're shooting 22 caliber, right? The wind plays a massive role in this, and you have to read the wind, but sometimes you also are just incredibly unlucky, and you can come in standing and it's blowing hard, and it's just really, really challenging to hold that rifle on the target.
Let's talk a little bit about the guns. So these are specially built bolt action rimfire guns, super specific. This isn't something you pick up at a sporting goods store, and they're open sights. Yep,
exactly. So they're bolt action. Pretty much all of them are a 2-stage bolt. So it's just a back and forth action. 98% of biathletes are using an Anschutz, Fortner is the model. They're, built specifically for biathlon. Now, everyone definitely customizes them quite a bit, but you do have to use open sights. So everyone's using peep sights of some type or another. Mm-hmm. But the part that gets really custom are the rifle stocks. So those stocks are, completely individualized. They're now you see quite a bit of carbon fiber stocks. Also, wood stocks are still still very common. But everything on that has to fit you perfectly, right? From the pistol grip to the overall length. To people, you can get crazy playing with all the little details. They have to weigh at least 3.5 kilograms. You can tell it's a European sport, right? Everything's in metric. They have to weigh at least 3.5 kilograms, which honestly, for the most part, you don't want anything lighter than that anyway. The lighter it gets, the harder it is to hold in standing. So you're trying to find that balance.
Was that of 7.5 pounds or something?
Yeah, it's right around 8 pounds.
8 pounds.
So you're trying to find that balance of, I want something that's light and close to the limit, but I still need to be able to shoot this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, for example, that balance was at 3.8 kilos.
How do you find somebody that can do stocks on such a gun? I mean, you can't, that's not something you find on in the yellow pages.
No, it's not. We do have a few good stock makers here in the US. People have been doing it for a while and have good product. It's also mostly you find these folks in Europe, and there are a few people who I would say more or less dominate the stock building scene, and you'll see that a lot of World Cup athletes are going to them. They're highly sought after, and I think they're making pretty good money with the amount of stocks they're selling and how expensive they are.
So you go, they measure you get in different positions, they look at where parts are touching, and
yeah. Generally, it starts with you kind of giving them specs on your current stock and just your general specs of, how tall you are, how long your arms are, things that you prefer on a stock. And a lot of times they will start by, like if it's a wood stock, they'll start by kind of roughing it out. Then you go there, and like my stock, for example, I had done in Germany, and he's the guy who does it is definitely considered one of the best in the business. And I went there for 3 or 4 days. And when I showed up, the stock was kind of roughed out, but we started right there with just dry firing, and then we kind of worked our way to the range and just making adjustments along the way. Now stocks have become, I would say, a little bit more modular, and you're able to, there are some stocks where you could just order and then just change out pieces to your liking. And those have come a long ways in the last few years as well.
Cool. That's cool. Ammunition. You guys are not hand loading 22 rimfire, so that plays a huge role. There's probably just a couple companies, I'm guessing, that make the stuff that you guys are using.
Yeah, so there are a couple companies again that really kind of dominate the biathlon space. On the US team, we use all Lapua ammunition, and I think one of the interesting things about biathlon shooting that's different than a lot of other shootings is obviously the cold, right? Cold plays a huge factor in the accuracy of this ammunition, and it's something that we test a lot for. A rifle or ammunition, that shoots well in the summer during training does not necessarily work at all when it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit and you're racing. The changing and grouping there can be dramatic. So it's something that everyone really needs to figure out. And we spend time sending our rifles to get tested in cold chambers. And as we're doing that, we're, working with Lapua to try a lot of different lots of different rounds that we like, and finding which lot works best in which rifle.
Wow.
And it's a funny thing, right? Because you typically find some lots that seem to work pretty darn well in a variety of rifles, but it's not always good in everyone's. And
you can't just hand your partner a handful of shells and say, have at it.
You can't. I mean, you can casually, but to be, really at your best at the highest level, you need to have tested ammo that works in your rifle. And that might not be the same stuff your buddy's shooting, even though it's from the same company. It's supposed to be all the same. It never is.
So these guns, you're only shooting at this 50 meter. So you've got them zeroed for point of aim, point of impact at 50. So if you've got all of the skiing taken out of the equation and you're just out laying prone trying to group, what are these guns capable of, like on an average group size if you're shooting paper?
If you're shooting paper with good ammo in reasonable temperatures, the guns are capable of laying them right on top of each other.
Really? So you're talking a 1/4 of an inch group at 50 meters.
Yeah, maybe a little bit bigger, but not much. It does change significantly the colder it gets. The colder it gets, those groups do open up.
Interesting.
Yeah. We also spend a lot of time testing barrels, which is getting harder and harder to do. Finding good barrels is not easy. And there are just not so many companies out there that make barrels that work super well in super cold conditions.
It seems like with all the other advances in technology, why would that not come along with everything else?
Yeah, I agree. But somehow still here at the end of the day, most people are using on-shoots barrels.
Okay.
And most of them are good, but you can buy one, you order a new rifle, it comes with your on-shoots barrel, and chances are it's going to work well in most conditions, but it's not always a guarantee that you're going to get a great barrel for cold conditions.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when you get one, you take care of it and you hold on to it.
But then you can shoot this thing out at some point, right? I guess with the 22, it's such a slow moving, not hot round. You're probably not cooking the barrels out like big calibers.
You're not, but they do shoot out, and we shoot, a biathlete on a world-class level who's training full-time is going to shoot somewhere in the neighborhood of kind of say 14 to 20,000 rounds a year.
Okay.
So these barrels, it depends a little bit on the barrel, depends on how you take care of it, I'm sure too, are going to go in that 80,000 round range is fairly normal. You get a few seasons.
6 years or so. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got a pitcher.
Yep. And then you can see it. You can see it when you keep testing them every year. It just starts opening up, and you just can't find a lot that's going to group what you need it to do.
Maddening.
Finally
make it work, and then it's back to square one.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the physicality, and then maybe talk a little bit about the mental side of stuff. Do you run as an Olympic athlete? You got to be in good shape. What other training besides the skiing?
Yeah. So, the physical training for biathlon is huge. It's at the highest levels, it is absolutely a full-time job. You're training just from the physical side of things. If you take shooting out of it, an average training day, you're putting in 4 hours of physical training a day in the off season. So, that could mean something like you are spending 2 hours. We do in the off season, we do a lot of roller skiing, it's called. So
those are cool looking.
They're cool, right? So you wear your normal ski boots, you have this kind of mini ski with 2 wheels, you go on the roads, use your ski poles. So in the morning, you might wake up and do 2 hours on the roller skis. And then in the afternoon, you're having lunch, maybe catching a quick nap if you're lucky. And then you're headed out for a 2-hour run. And then, in between, maybe you're at the shooting range. So it's really quite a bit. And you're doing that day in and day out pretty much all year long.
What kind of pace do you run at when you're just doing these training runs? Yeah.
So I think that's something that catches people off guard a lot, is that I would say about 80% of our training is done at a pretty slow pace.
Okay.
And it's simply because of the volume of training they're doing. You're training so much that it just would not be possible to go out there and just hammer as hard as you could every day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So kind of the way it works is your slow training, or what we call our easy training, distance training, is easy, and it's done at a very moderate pace just for long periods of time. But then those hard training sessions are really hard, like make you want to vomit type hard, of doing things like hill running, normal just roller skiing. We do some work on treadmill. We have roller ski treadmills, and obviously on snow as well. But those workouts are super tough, and they make up about 10% of your training. Then the other 10% would be more like strength training. So we still, even though it's an endurance sport, it's an endurance power sport. So you need to be strong as well. You need to be skinny strong.
Yeah, I noticed most of you gals are pretty long and lean. Like what are you, about 180 pounds maybe?
So yeah, when I was, I'm 5'11". When I was racing, I was down to 160 pounds.
Okay.
During the season. Yeah, you see different body types, but yeah, you are correct. Generally long and fairly lean.
Kind of like it look, most of the folks I've looked at looked like marathon runners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like triathletes, maybe.
Like triathletes, I would say. Yeah. So
Yeah.
probably a little bit bulkier than a marathon runner.
Yeah, that was a bad analogy. More like triathlete.
More like a triathlete is a very good analogy.
Yeah.
It's that type of body type in general, but of course there are always exceptions.
Have you ever ran a marathon or a foot race like that?
No, I used to run a lot when I was younger, but have not done anything like that. And I've been retired from competing now for 4 years, so not much desire to do that anymore.
No.
No, I still train a decent amount, but actually it's funny. I haven't done one race since I stopped racing 4 years ago.
What's your resting heart rate, or what was it when you were competing? Do you remember or no?
Yeah, when I was competing, resting heart rate would be upper 30s to low 40s.
Okay. What's it now 4 years later?
A little bit higher.
Yeah.
A little bit higher.
80, 90, you got a cigarette going on.
No, it's probably upper 40s now.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So are you your current job, director of athletic development? Do you still mix it up? You still throw the skis on or all office stuff now?
No, I try and get out and mix it up, especially with the younger ones a little bit. So I'll definitely ski with them, do some of the running and other trainings with them. If it's, a really hard session, I'll definitely make sure I'm the one in the van driving. But I do get out and still train with them. But spend quite a bit of time on the range now as well. And yeah, it's been fun to kind of transition. And, I did the sport for a long time. I worked with some absolutely amazing people during my career. From the physical side of things, I had really some of the best ski coaches out there. From the shooting side of things, worked with some great people. Got to work with Matt Emmons, I'm sure you've heard of, in actually just in my last year of competing. Still work with him today on the coaching side of things, but have learned a tremendous amount from him. And it's been fun to kind of take all that and try and help this next generation that's coming up.
That's cool. What do you do exactly? What's your day look like? What does the job entail?
Yeah, so it varies a lot from day to day. We're a small organization, so no matter what your title is, you end up doing a little bit of everything. But for example, I just returned a few days ago from Slovenia, and I brought a group of our best junior biathletes over there for 2 weeks of racing. For some of them, it was their first time experiencing European biathlon, which is a little bit of a bigger deal over there. So I lead a lot of trips like that in the wintertime, bringing kids over to Europe to race and get to experience the kind of the sport at its highest levels for their age group. And then in the summer and the off season, I run a lot of training camps. So here in Lake Placid, where I'm located, we have the Olympic Training Center right here. And we have a brand new biathlon venue as well. So a lot of times, we'll have groups come in here, staying at the training center, and I'll work with them just on their, on the whole package, from the physical side of things to spend a lot of time on the range, helping them with positions to their equipment and everything in between.
Okay. This is a good spot to kind of bring up, when are we going to win a medal? That biathlon is the only winter sport that America's never won a medal in, right?
That is true. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It pains me to say that, but yeah, biathlon is the only Winter Olympic sport that we have yet to win a medal in. We have. Do
you think like the president would be giving you guys some special help, something, so we can put an end?
I know. I agree. Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about, right?
What separates? So like, and I want you to comment on this, but what separates like place 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from 3, 2, 1? Like how much time? How is it just minute fractions of seconds?
Maddeningly small. It is really.
Is it like most other Olympic sports? Like you watch like the sprint, like the 100-yard sprint, and these 10 racers run down the track, and it's hundreds of seconds separating them. Is it like that?
Yeah. So, our sprint race that we talked about, right, for the men's field, say it takes 25 minutes. So it's not a short race, right? It takes 25 minutes. You have over 100 people doing it in the Olympics. Often you will have 10 seconds separating 10 places. It is super, super tight. So percentage wise, it is unbelievably close. It's fractions. And often you will get that one or two kind of dominant athletes who are more or less consistently on the podium, but those other podium spots change a lot from day to day. I think that's one of the biggest differences about biathlon. After a World Cup season, it's not uncommon to have 30 different athletes that have stood on the podium. Where if you compare that to just Nordic skiing, for example, right, you take the shooting out of it, that number becomes way smaller. And if you're looking at other Olympic sports, the amount of people that are on the podium is usually pretty small. Biathlon, with just so many variables, especially the shooting part of it, it's wild, and you see big swings.
What's got to happen for America to medal? Like are we not growing strong enough butt muscles or something here in the States?
I think, I could talk a lot about that for sure. There are a lot of things that we can do better. Absolutely. We've been very, very close. In 2014, for example, one of my teammates, he ended up 8th in the race. He split his last shot. So a split means, right, half that bullet, you shoot right on the edge, half goes out, half goes in. And sometimes those will score as a hit. Sometimes they don't. You just don't know. He split that one shot, and that would have been a medal. In that same Olympics, one of our women had a very similar experience. Same thing. If that had been a hit, she would have been on the podium. So we've been close, and we have athletes coming up here. Just, they start racing, I think February 4th or 5th. We have athletes there this year in China that will have a chance. They're underdogs for sure. No one's been on a World Cup podium yet this year, but one of our women was 4th place in the last World Cup we did. So she was obviously knocking at the door. The women's relay just 2 weeks ago was 5th place. So they could definitely do it as well.
Awesome.
But what we really need, we need more athletes doing the sport. So when we're competing against a country like a Norway.
Are you asking me? Are you asking me to step it in?
I want, yeah. After this, we need to head out to the range. I need to see what you've got.
Shooting, I'd probably be okay at, literally, but that cross country skiing's for the birds, man.
One thing talking about shooting that I didn't go into any detail on before, which I think maybe your listeners would find interesting, because I get this question all the time. Everyone always asks, how much are you slowing down when you come in to shoot?
Well, that's what I wanted to get to that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry if I'm jumping ahead.
You're good. You're good. I've got no agenda.
All right.
That's cool. Yeah. So this is the stuff. So I work with a bunch of guys. One of them, Brian McKenzie. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Brian McKenzie, The Art of Breath. He's a New York Times best-selling author. Breath work is kind of his jam. He was a long distance endurance athlete. For you guys listening or watching that don't know Brian, him and Rob Wilson, we work with. And you're going from 180, 190 beats a minute, pumping up and down these hills, to now I've got to control this muzzle and this little peep sight at something as big as the width of a 2x4, 50 meters away. That's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And it takes a lot of practice, and you don't slow down much, though. That's the thing I think people don't often understand when they watch the sport. Everyone always asks, how much do you slow down before coming in to shoot? And, the sport is competitive enough now, and there are enough good people doing it, that if you want a chance at being on that podium, you need to go for it. And taking your time, coming into the range, giving away seconds so you can get your heart rate down, not going to work. So although you might not be pinning it as fast as you possibly can to the point, you are not backing off that much. You're hitting that shooting mat, taking your rifle off. And for a lot of people, that heart rate is still hovering around 180 beats per minute.
Are you positioning your body to get your rib cage off the ground so it's not bouncing you as much? Are you shooting? I mean, shooting between heart rates would be pretty impossible at 180 beats a minute, but are you got such control over the gun that the bounce of the sights, you're just still able to keep it inside of the target zone? What's that look like?
It looks very different for prone and standing, or at least it did for me. Prone, you're able to still hold within the target, but you need to score more of a center hit for that target to go down. In prone, you deal more with pulse. So we shoot with a cuff on, right? So you have this cuff on for right-handed shooters on your left arm, which is, you attach a sling from the rifle to your cuff. If you don't have that positioned well, you can see quite a bit of pulse coming through your arm into the barrel movement. And a lot of people struggle with that in prone shooting. So getting that taken care of makes a huge, huge difference for shooting prone. Standing is definitely different in that you're not necessarily able to just hold on that target. It becomes a little bit more of a timing game. So you can't just hold on the target and, okay, here, I'm going to take the shot. In standing, there's a little bit more of, oh, the target's coming. I see it coming. I'm starting my squeeze. I'm on target, squeeze. Where prone is more of a, okay, fine aim, holding right on the target. It's more of a controlled thing.
Do you talk to yourself at all as you're doing it? Do you have any kind of a cadence in your head, or done it so many times it's on autopilot?
No, there's always some cue that I would be using during shooting. And that wasn't always the same cue. A lot of times it was different for prone than it was for standing. But you need something to keep your mind occupied that's going to help you, right? It's so easy. And again, you might interview a different biathlete and they might say something completely different. But for me, if I didn't have something that I was consciously giving myself to work on and think about, then I would be allowing space for other thoughts to kind of come into my head. The thoughts of, ooh, if I hit one more target, I can get this place. Or, ooh, I can hear someone shooting next to me and I can hear that they're hitting the target, or I can hear that they're missing.
Now you're not focused on what's in front of you.
Exactly. So giving myself a cue that's going to help me do something maybe a little bit technically better makes a big, big difference. For me, the things that I often would use could be things like focusing on a little bit more follow through, better trigger squeeze. It could be something with the breathing. In the end, for me, my best cue that I used, sounds super funny, in prone, was I just said to myself every time as I was coming up onto the target, right? This is happening super, super fast. Every time as I was coming up on the target, exhaling, ready to settle on that shot, in my mind, I would just say center. And
Center.
I guess I'm just not that smart, because
I think that's super smart.
Every time I was missing targets, I could get off that mat and start skiing away. I'm like, why did you miss? You didn't take the 10th of a second longer you needed to actually aim. You just exhaled and shot. If I reminded myself, just center. You couldn't see any difference if you were watching me do it, but there was a difference there, and that I just spent that tiny fraction of a second longer to make sure I had that fine aiming and would take a much better shot. For standing, some of the cues I like to use was more like focusing on my breathing. So it's happening fast. It's a little bit more of a reaction in standing. And for me, like, one of the problems I had is sometimes I wouldn't completely finish my breath and stop it before I let a shot go. So I would get a little bit too much into reaction shooting, where if I reminded myself, no, stop that breath before the shot goes, that helped a lot. Or also for me in standing, follow through. Super important. Anytime you're really reacting on a target, and you can see people when they react on a target, you see that little like flinch right as the shot breaks. For me in biathlon, when I see athletes doing that now, I know they're reacting on it. I know they're anticipating, right? They're coming down, they see that target, they get excited, and there's just that tiny little bit of a flinch, which often creates a miss. for me and for the athletes I work with now, being able to focus on follow through of what's going to happen after that shot helps take away that anticipation of this, oh, here comes the target, here comes the target. Nope, you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on having a nice, smooth follow through. And then you'll see when that shot breaks, the barrel is just a lot smoother and ends up, better chance of a hit.
So when you look, the follow through you're looking for, is it to pause in that position for a second, a half a second after the shot? Is that what you're focusing on? Like stay right here, stay on center, pressure on the trigger, it breaks. Like you're looking for just a pause for a moment?
Yeah. So just looking for that pause. One easy way to do that in biathlon is to try and see the target turn white, right? So, as the shot breaks, you have your recoil, even though it's a 22 and it's incredibly small, you see the barrel jump up, and I want to see that barrel come back down and settle on that target that you
right
just
back
saw.
Where you were holding.
Yeah. My wife, for example, we talked about her earlier. She was one of the best shooters. Her cue that she just used all the time was she liked to just hold her trigger tiny bit longer after that shot broke. So she wanted to be super smooth on trigger and focusing on the follow through, not so much of the shot, but of the trigger is what helped her take better shots.
So before she'd rack the bolt or drive the sights to the next target, she would mentally cue in on pinning the trigger back for a second.
Yep. And just a real split second. But, I watch a lot of younger athletes shoot now, and, that trigger finger is bouncing.
Off.
It is jumping off. It drives me crazy. It's always one thing we work on for sure.
I dig that. That's all good stuff. In our rifle courses, not the same. Well, one of the drills that we do, 100 yards, 5-inch target, standing, kneeling, prone. And you've got 10 seconds to hit that 5-inch target, from those three positions. So shot timer goes off, 5-inch target, 100 yards. This is like red dot AR-15s, no magnification usually. And it's super easy to do if you can get to the position quickly. So that's one reason I've been really enjoying watching the biathlon and the training you guys do, because you're cooking ass and then you get into the position so fast. So we'll do things like, which is not meant to be analogous to biathlon, but we'll sprint 100 yards or move a load like a 150-pound dummy for 50 yards to not just create stress or even accelerate the heart rate, but just to create some type of physical stressor, as well as force the person to have to think through some type of problem solving. You were talking about coming into a position and pushing. Do you ever find that, like, man, I've been holding back, I could push another couple percent and still get hits? Is there any of those thresholds that you've worked through? Do you find, like, some of the people that are meddling constantly, are they seeming to push harder? Comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the really interesting part here is if you're not pushing hard enough, again, another one of these things that's going to sound wacko, but I'm telling you, it's the truth. If you're not pushing hard enough and you slow down a little bit too much, you end up shooting in a really awkward zone where you have this big stroke volume from your heart. And that is where you run into more problems with seeing that pulse in your barrel movement, where if your heart is going faster, it's going that 170, 180 beats per minute. So those beats are just a little bit smaller, and you don't see that as much in your barrel movement. For me, I had a zone where it was the death zone I needed to avoid. I could shoot well if I was just going easy, like just easy training. But once I got into that like 160 to 170 range, 175 range, things got tough. And I saw more barrel movement because that stroke volume of the heart is so big there.
That's interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of a know yourself kind of a situation. You got to know your own body. You guys training with all kinds of monitors on you? Are you running races with any kind of a monitor on you?
We use heart rate monitors quite a bit. Some people are racing with them, some aren't, but during training they're on quite a bit. So you can kind of learn. I preferred to learn just the feeling of where I needed to be. It wasn't so much of, I didn't want to be in a race, like checking my watch all of the time and have that distraction.
Yeah.
So I trained with it quite a bit, but I never raced with it on. And I just really tried to learn what that correct feeling was. If you start pushing too much when you come in, the other part that really starts to mess with is just your breathing cadence between shots. So typically every athlete has a cadence that they like to stick to. For most athletes on the World Cup, that's going to be just one breath between each shot. So you shoot, one breath, shoot, one breath, shoot. Sometimes you'll see athletes doing a 2-breath cadence. Sometimes you'll see athletes breaking cadence during that stage. So they come in, get a shot off, 1 breath, get another shot off, then they feel they're getting a little bit stressed, and you'll see them take maybe 2 or 3 breaths. In general, you kind of want to stick to your routine.
Find what works.
Find what works and stick to that. You don't want to always have to be changing and making that call as you're in there. If you're coming in too hot, you're going to have that problem where it's just really hard to stick to your normal breathing cadence.
I'm sure things like conditions affect that too. If you're skiing in a blizzard and your glasses or goggles are soaking wet, that stuff probably screws you up when you get into the shooting stage as well.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Crazy cold or
crazy
wind.
Cold. That's another interesting part of biathlon is you're racing out there. The cutoff is -4 Fahrenheit, where they won't run races any colder than that. And that's because it can be like damaging to your lungs to race in really cold weather. But often you're racing in temperatures that are close to that. And you don't like wearing big, thick gloves because you need to feel the rifle. You need to feel the trigger. You need to be able to load a mag. And you've got these, your race gloves on. You come in and you can't feel your hands. You can't feel the trigger. And I've had races where you're loading a mag and you're just doing it visually. Like I can see that I have a mag in my hand, but I can't feel it.
That sounds
horrible. You're just putting it in, and same thing, you get on the trigger, and that it just becomes a muscle memory thing at that point. And you better hope you've got your rounds in for that year, because you really can't feel the trigger when it's that cold.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. I grew up in Chicago area, so similar climate to yours, temperature wise. I don't hate the cold, but and I've done plenty of outdoor activities, snowmobiling, ice fishing, skiing, but I don't know if I'd like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's not a comfortable part. It's not a comfortable part, and I don't miss it. Now as a coach, standing on the range, I get to wear as thick of gloves as I want.
Yeah. That's nice. Talk a little bit about some of the mental stuff. Being in the Olympics 4 times is pretty impressive. All the people that compete in the world in athletics, the most minute fraction ever make it to the Olympics, and you did it 4 times. That ton of pressure, not a big deal for you. And then also maybe comment a little bit on, I've read and talked to other people, what happened after all that was done? Like, I've heard some people maybe go through bouts of depression, or just, you are still in it working with the team, but just comment on some of that stuff a little bit. Yeah.
So I guess first, from the sports side of things, the mental game, and this isn't unique to biathlon, right? But the mental game is just a huge, huge part of that. And it's something for me personally that definitely took time to develop. And earlier on in my career, I didn't really work on it. I just thought, I'm a good shooter. I'm a good skier. Like, I don't, this isn't something that really impacts me.
You didn't have coaches telling you, think about this, do this?
A little bit, but not to the level that I think it needed to be. Okay. And, it wasn't really until I had a few times when I struggled, and I knew that the struggle was mental. I knew that I had the skills to do better. And once you have that happen to you a couple of times, I really dug more into the mental game, and that it's like physical training. You can't cheat and cram the day before a race and say, "Oh, I'm going to train a lot," right? It takes a year or years of working on that stuff to make it really work for you when it counts. And it's the same. It's that way for physical training. It's the same way for your mental game. it's something that takes time and you need to commit to. Things like visualization. I had the hardest time doing visualization when I first started trying to do it. I couldn't visualize anything, you know?
Pause for a second. I'm a big fan of visualization, but I want the folks to understand exactly what you're talking about. So describe what you're talking about, please.
Yeah, so there's different ways to do visualization, but kind of a general way that I would use it would be to spend a little bit of time each day. It can be just 10 to 15 minutes a day. And maybe it's only 5 days a week you're doing that. So it's not a huge time commitment, but where I'm taking time out of my day, where I'm relaxed, I can sit in my comfortable chair, or maybe I'm lying in bed and closing my eyes, first working on my breathing to kind of bring myself into that relaxed state, and then running myself through some shooting stages or through a race that I have coming up that I know is important to me. And, you know, in that visualization, I'm thinking about things like, what am I hearing? What am I smelling? How do my skis feel gliding over the snow? And using that stuff to help create that memory in your brain of what it's like to have a great race. And the more you do that and the better you get at that, it just makes having that race that you've been visualizing that much easier. And I can remember specifically some of my best races, like when I won the silver medal at World Championships. People always would ask, what did it feel like when you finished? Well, it felt like something I'd done hundreds and hundreds of times.
You already saw it.
You saw it. You've been there. You felt it. And it's a weird feeling when it actually happens, because it feels normal, because you've just done it so many times.
Your subconscious had convinced you of the reality.
Yes.
It's so weird to hear you say that. And then people are like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then think about, what if I had applied this every time? What if I applied this to everything, or everything that really matters to me? Like, I'm going to get a good score on that test, or I'm going to get a good sales call, or I'm going to get whatever the thing is. Like, what if I applied that to everything? It's
powerful.
Yeah. Do you find yourself recalling moments like that in other parts of your life? Like, whatever the hard thing may be, or does anything even seem hard in comparison? Like, I have friends that were elite soldiers, for example, and I'll hear them talk about other things in life, and they're like, yeah, everything's no big deal. Not maybe because of like super intense training or super intense traumatic experiences. Like, nothing's a big deal anymore.
Right. No, and that's those guys are clearly at a different level for sure, and ladies. But no, I think there is some truth to that, where you get used to working in a high pressure environment. And then just after that, kind of some of the normal day-to-day stuff that maybe would stress others out is not as big of a deal anymore. Not saying that I don't get stressed out still, but it definitely carries over into other parts of your life for sure.
Do you like competition? I don't mean that in a facetious way. Of course you do. But like, if you and I played cards, would you be like, if we arm wrestled, would it be like all or nothing? Like, do you hate losing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was like that when I was a little kid. My parents talk about being embarrassed to have me at like a local ski race when I was a kid, where you're competing for lollipops, because I would be, wanting to throw in an elbow to get to that lollipop first.
Yeah,
I'm able to hide it better now, but yeah, I can't lie. I'm definitely.
I'm assuming your wife is probably like that too.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's got to be interesting. How old were you when you started competing? Like on a big level?
On a big level, I was about 16, and I competed. I retired from competition. I was 36.
So most of the formative years of your adult life were around other highly competitive people. You might not even be able to answer the question or even think about it, because it's like somebody that grows up in Alaska doesn't know what like warm winters are. Like that had to deeply impact the way that you approach everything, when everybody you're around is trying to win, and not a loser.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's interesting just working in that environment for so long and it's not just the athletes, the coaches there at that time too, they're super competitive people. They're there doing that job because they want to win too. So you're just surrounded by people who are, for the most part, always trying to get the best out of themselves. And it's, it's different than, for sure, leaving that environment and being in the real world.
You talking about the mental aspect of stuff, the self-talk, the visualization. What do you think about when you hear somebody say, I can't, or it's hard, or it's too hard, or I can't change it, or just those types of phrases? Like, do you, like, if you hear one of your athletes, or just in general, you hear somebody say that kind of stuff, what comes to mind?
Yeah. What's that saying? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
There's so much truth to that. And that
was Henry Ford, I do believe, that said
that. And it's just spot on, right? It's normal, especially now working with like younger athletes, developing athletes, to hear that kind of stuff. I can't do this, or always kind of looking, always putting the blame somewhere else, right? And it's something that needs to be learned, and it's for the most part not natural for most people.
How do you respond to somebody? Like, if I was a young athlete working in your program, and you were saying, hey, Mick, you got to do X, Y, Z. And I said, I can't, Coach Tim. Like, what would you say to me?
What I love the way my wife puts it best with these situations. When you have someone that's, I can't do this, or you're always pointing the finger at someone else, right? So the problem's not really yours. When sun was in my eyes, the wind was bad, or whatever it is. When you're always finding somewhere else to put the blame, you lose control to get better, right? If it's not your fault, it's always something else. It's your equipment, it's the conditions outside, whatever. Then it's like giving up, because it's just not possible. Then you're saying it's not possible for you to get better and make that change. And teaching young athletes that,
hey, you might as well just quit at that point.
You might as well, okay, then you just stop practicing, I guess, if you can't control anything that's happening with what you're doing. And so kind of explaining that goes a long ways. I try and do it in a nice way, right? But having that ability to learn and reflect on what you're doing is huge. And it's not natural for most people. It's natural to want to blame someone else or blame the conditions, and something that it's not natural for someone to shoot 5 shots in 25 seconds with 180 heart rate either. It needs to be worked on.
That makes sense. Is there anything, if you went back to 16, 17-year-old self, would you tell yourself?
Absolutely. I'd give myself a little smack and give that same talk of, hey, take more ownership of what's going on with what
weren't you owning, though? You made it to the Olympics 4 times.
I think, if I reflect back, I, like a lot of people, but I enjoyed working more on my strengths for sure. And now, looking back at some of that stuff, I'm like, man, I could have spent a little more time on that part of your
things you suck at.
Doing the things that you didn't really enjoy doing. And you were good at the things you did well, and you really liked doing those a lot. But you could have spent a little bit more time on some of those weaker sections.
Which things did you, or could you have improved on that you were weak in?
For me, standing shooting was always my Achilles heel. And it was something that, my prone shooting, I was very often one of the better guys out there competing. Standing shooting was tough for me. And why exactly? It's hard to say. But I wish I had spent a little bit more time kind of investigating that, putting myself in more uncomfortable situations during the off season and being okay with that. Sometimes I didn't like to do that because it was it's my weak point, and I didn't want to face that. And I think I could have done a better job with that, for sure.
That's open. I dig that. Isn't that part of your coach's job to have pointed that stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, but you got to take ownership too, right? Especially at the highest levels.
I'm not blaming it on the coach. I just am saying, like, isn't that kind of the point of a coach, to help you see some of those things?
For sure, it is. It is. But at those highest levels, it's so much comes back to you got to own it. I like I mentioned quickly earlier, in my last year of competing, I had the opportunity to work with Matt Emmons, who comes from the shooting world, is one of the best shooters out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy, I don't know if he still does, but held world records and whatnot. And he works a lot with our team now. He's our head shooting coach. And he's a guy who he'll call you out for your weaknesses. And he's a great guy to have around. And I do wish I had him earlier in my career, for sure.
I'm looking him up right now. What was his? I know who he is, but now I'm.
Yeah, so Matt, he's got Olympic medals.
Air rifle, right?
Yep, he does everything.
Have you ever met or worked with Lanny Basham?
I know the name very well, but I never worked with him. No.
His book was With Winning in Mind. I think I got it behind me on the bookshelf. That was always like in the guys I knew that were high-level competitive shooters, like in USPSA, IPSC, IDPA, like fast-paced pistol shooting. That was always the guy that they would try to find for the head game stuff.
Yeah, that's a great book. Definitely highly suggest that to your listeners, for sure. My favorite shooting book, sounds funny, the golf book. Bob Rotella, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect.
I know this book. I've never read it, but I know the book.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Reading that book, it just, it's about golf, but reading it and going, I swear he's writing this about biathlon. Like the things he was mentioning in there, it's like, oh, that's what it feels like when you're.
What's his name again?
Bob Rotella. Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. Love that book. He's talking about sinking a putt when your hands are shaking, right? Because you're so excited about this putt, and just his ways about talking about that. I'm like, oh man, I know that exact same feeling. You're so excited in biathlon, you're getting shaky hands. Yeah, highly suggested.
But you work through it. That's probably the thing I think that's lacking most in the general public's practice of anything. Like I said, sales earlier, only because it's so relatable, but everybody kind of like looks at the task, like, how do I do the mechanical stuff better? Or how do I run faster? But the whole mental side, I've known guys that could show up to a training range and perform like feats of superhuman skill. And then as soon as a shot timer or the match starts, they just fall apart, which is, like you built some skills, but have no mental game.
Right. And it's, like I said before, it's something that takes practice. And
that was one of the things Lanny, just now that I think about it, in his book, that was one of the main things. He had a training partner that was an Olympian with him. And in practice, he would beat the guy. Not all the time, but he would beat him in practice, and then match day would come and the guy'd burn him down. And he's always like, what the heck is going on here? No pressure, but this guy did better under pressure. So he started to emulate and work with that guy. There was a story where something happened with one of their rifles, got lost or broken. And the guy that had to shoot like a borrowed rifle and still like won some major match, just shooting somebody else. Like, and you talked about all the customization, sounds like it would be like impossible, but this dude could just so focus, just threw all that out and put the sights on the center and did the deed.
Yeah. Hey, if you want to compete at a high level, mental game is, you need it. You need it.
Do you ever work with groups like 10th Mountain Division or any organizations like that where there's U.S. soldiers on skis?
We have not done that.
No.
Definitely would be interested in doing that, though, for sure. A lot of our athletes are soldiers as well. So there are quite a few athletes on our national team now who are in the National Guard biathlon program.
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Yeah. So it's always been that way, but it goes up and down a little bit depending on, the years of how many national team athletes we have in that program. But right now they have a super strong program. It's a great program. They have a lot of support for the athletes, and the athletes are soldiers and biathletes. And
how is your organization funded? I've never understood that, like the gymnastics or the bobsledding or any of it. How's that funded?
Yeah, so U.S. Olympic sports are all, there's no government funding or anything like that, like there are for most other countries. So the majority of our funding comes directly from the U.S. Olympic Committee. And the U.S. Olympic Committee, they get their money through sponsorships.
Nike.
Exactly. Through donations. So the majority of our funding at U.S. Biathlon comes from the Olympic Committee, but of course we have our own team sponsors as well that help out.
Okay. Can individuals support? Can people like to say, I want to support the biathlon team?
Absolutely. We have a lot of people who do that, and it makes a huge difference just by going to our website, usbiathlon.org. They're able to make a donation, and we're a small, very small group, and every dollar really makes a difference for us.
You'll have to send me links for that before we post this podcast so we can share them in the show notes. Yeah, that's
great.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah. Well, if you guys had more money, is there something to use it on, or do you have everything you need?
Oh, we definitely have plenty. We could go on for another hour here on things we could use. We're a pretty small staff for sure, and we can always use more help out there working with our athletes, and we do the most with what we have right now. But every bit helps us do more for sure.
So do you need to go like lobby and say, hey, we need more funding because we can't buy XYZ?
Yeah. I mean, even things like equipment now is so expensive, biathlon rifles, one of those on-shoots rifles that we were talking about earlier. And I'm not even talking about getting into really customizing it. Just a standard one with a standard stock straight out of the factory. Last year they were running like $4,000. And I believe now they're up closer to $5,000.
Okay.
So
if you fall and break one of these things,
and it's a lot to ask, right? You have a kid who's talented, who likes the sport, but wants to give it a try, and you're saying, okay, we'll give it a try and fork over $5,000 to get a rifle to give it a try. That's a big ask.
Is there any money in it? Like somebody can play hockey, right? Make it to the NHL or play in college, get their education paid for. Can you go buy all these things? Parents are taking you all over to these matches. Can you earn a living?
If you become competitive internationally, you can make really good money. So, talking about earlier how it's such a big TV sport in Europe, people aren't getting paid like, NFL, NBA type money, but the very best athletes are retiring when they're done with competing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you absolutely can make a really good living if you can make it onto the World Cup and be one of the better athletes. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What do you think's next for you? Are you going to spend the rest of your career in the biathlon sport, or you have anything else planned? Anything on the horizon?
I definitely plan on sticking around in biathlon. It's been such a huge part of my life. Has been my life for, since as long as I can remember, since I was a kid. And the sport has given me so much. It's where I met my wife. There's just a lot. And I really enjoy giving back to that now with my position.
Makes sense. And you sound like, just listening to you talk about it, I think passion is probably the wrong word, but it just sounds like you really love everything about it, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good to find something like that.
It is. It's what's kept me in it so long, and I definitely have other passions as well on the side.
Like what?
Oh, my biggest one now since I stopped competing. I was always into hunting. Like I grew up hunting.
Got some nice deer up in New York there.
We do. They're elusive up here where I am and around Lake Placid, but I do enjoy hunting them. But for me now, I'm all about upland hunting. As soon as I retired, I got a bird dog.
What kind?
And just am absolutely obsessed with that.
German short hair. What do you got?
German short hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent dogs.
German
You'll
short
get a
hair.
kick out of this. One of my good buddy Aaron, I was just talking with him this morning, got a rescue and taught this bird to hunt. It's a full-bred Doberman. So I've hunted over his name's Obi. I've hunted over Obi. This dog will point and retrieve and is amazing. He'll work, and he's a big long-legged Doberman with his ears are not cropped, so they'll flop down. Gorgeous, that gorgeous like deep brownish red.
Yeah.
And he's super long, so he can jump through the tall grass and stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, he's amazing. Anyway,
that's great.
You bird hunt.
I bird hunt. I love doing that.
You guys have
obsessed with it.
Grouse up there?
Yeah, so mostly grouse and woodcock here.
Okay.
But since coming from a rifle background, now I've had to focus on shotgunning, and it was not an easy transition for me. I'm not going to lie.
Are you an over/under guy, an auto loader?
I'm an over/under guy.
Yeah.
Right now, but I have a little bit of everything, but I typically shoot an over/under.
What kind of shotgun do you like if you were to grab one now to go out and chase some birds?
So if I was headed out to chase birds now, here hunting just grouse and woodcock, I shoot a 28 gauge. It's a Beretta Silver Pigeon.
Beretta, nice. Yeah, I'm a big Beretta guy. I shoot their pistols. I shoot their auto loader. I've got a couple of their autos that I shoot, but I don't have any of their over/unders. That's a good gun. So I did want to ask you about something. I found one article online that connected you to gun control, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And I was like, well, I got to ask him about this. You said something along the lines of like, I would lock my guns up if I knew it would save somebody or save a life. Like, comment on that a little bit. What was the context of what I read?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that really well, simply because I got a lot of comments on that comment.
Sure.
It was at the Olympics in 2018, and it was
that Sochi?
Pyeongchang.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was at the Olympics. The day we raced, or it was the day before, the day we raced, there was one of a very unfortunate mass shooting. And when I finished the race and walked through what they call the mixed zone, it was, just got kind of pounced on about gun questions. So it was an unfortunate incident, obviously, incredibly. Also just really challenging timing with all of that, right? You just finished an Olympic race and you getting all sorts of different questions. But anyway, I'm
not asking you like, why did you say that?
No. No, absolutely. I still 100% stand by what I said, which kind of to clarify that, I guess, would be that I absolutely believe, in the right to own firearms. You can probably talking to me here today, you know that, and I have many. However, I'm not opposed to, if I thought there was a way to have better control of who's getting those firearms, if I thought there was a way that we could cut down on something like a mass school shooting,
sure,
I would be open to hearing that and working with it. For me, whatever, I know that's different for everyone, but it happens too often. And if there is any way whether that it was more gun control, whether that's better healthcare, whether that's better, mental health. If there's any way that we could make sure or help decrease that type of thing, I'm all ears.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's the double-edged sword of liberty. I mean, I would never trade some child's life for my enjoyment to plink at targets, but I think that's one of those things we also have to like point at the problem. It's not the guns problem. It's the psychopathic murderer that's killing kids or shooting up crowds or, yeah, that's a tough one. I just wanted to understand what you were saying, because I thought there's no way this person's made a career shooting guns and thinks guns shouldn't be, but I wanted to hear that. And that's like one of those issues like, oh, well, if you think guns are okay, then you think kids should be murdered. They're not a connected thing.
Exactly. I hate how today, whether it's politics or gun control, right? How it's you're one or the other, and there's no in between, and you can't either good or you're bad. And if you're a gun owner, you're a bad person. No, like there's middle ground here. And just like you said, for me, it's okay. How do you keep the gun out of the psychopath's hand? Like, no, I don't think to do that. I don't think everyone needs to have their guns taken away.
Minority Report.
But,
wasn't that movie where they saw the future? I mean, that's the problem is that we don't have the ability to always see that. There's a lot of these mass shootings, mass murders are so broadcast. I just shared something on our social media. I live in Chicago area. I'm out in the country, but we have like, it was one day, 7 kids were shot in Chicago just randomly by gang violence, where rounds went through houses, went into cars. That's just one day, not a week, not a month, just one afternoon. And nobody talks about it because it's just so common. And like that kind of stuff, let's lock people up that are just shooting up. These big isolated instances are horrific and horrible, but it's not any worse than the children being shot on a daily basis in our major cities either. But
a life is a life, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And I think, sports like yours, and I do believe in the right to keep and bear arms, not only for things like hunting and sport, but also for the protection of life and liberty. I think that it's a great thing because it showcases the use of the tool, not just in like a safe or proper manner, but like what a human being's capable of with training. Yeah,
absolutely. No, and I think, biathlon does a good job with that. And like you said, I'm someone who earned a living for a long time shooting a rifle.
New York's an interesting state. Like I drove through your area a few times. It's one of the most gorgeous parts of the country, especially in the eastern side. So much rural countryside, but then you are dictated legislatively by New York, just like my state. Most of Illinois is all rural, and then we have Chicago's politics. Is that, and you grew up kind of rural?
I grew up very rural. Northern New York, where I am here, even Lake Placid, people know about Lake Placid, had the Olympics twice. And I think people are always surprised how small it really is, though, how rural it is up here with, obviously most of the population down in the city. But Northern New York, it's always funny when I be in Europe competing and people would ask me where you're from, say New York, they get the complete wrong picture.
They think you're in Manhattan or the Bronx or something.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do you ski with all that pavement? Yeah.
We're not far from the Canadian border here.
It's such a beautiful spot. I'd love to get back. I've never skied there. What's the best spot to ski if I come to that part of the world?
Right here in Lake Placid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I
got great venues. Actually, recently there's been a lot of upgrades to the venues here. Whether it's Alpine skiing or Nordic skiing, it's all right here. Come visit me.
I will.
I'll take you out to the biathlon range too.
I would love that. I would actually just love to come watch some training. Just because everything that we've been talking about is to see that stuff actually happening in real time. It'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
I often ask guests, if you never met the people that we've been talking with, what would you leave them with? Something that they could take on into life that would provide value to them.
Oh man, that's a great question. So you're talking like your listeners.
Yeah. I mean, the people that are listening, watching, if they never met Tim in person, if they never see you again, if this is the last time they hear your voice, what would you leave them with? Donate to the American Biathlon Association.
Give US Biathlon a lot of money. No, I would leave them with just something real simple. Maybe it sounds cheesy and corny, but it's true. And it's just believe in yourself. Like I feel like with my situation, I grew up doing this sport that no one even knew about in the US. And people said, oh, Americans can't be good at biathlon. And I always use that to motivate myself and just kept that belief, even when things weren't always going well. And I see a lot of people, I feel like, who give up too early on their dreams and don't really go for it. So believe in yourself and go for it.
How many times did you ever hear somebody say, like, it's too big a challenge, it's too big a thing? Do you know how many people don't make it to the Olympics, Tim? Did you hear people say that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I had people tell me when I was younger, I'm not going to name them, but
was it ever anybody that was like close to you that you actually cared about too?
Not so much that I cared about particularly, but but who I like assumed knew what they were talking about.
Okay.
They were in positions of more authority. And I absolutely had people say, oh, it's not gonna make it. You gotta be kidding. This is a European sport, dominated by those guys and girls over there. Like, coming from a small town here, you're never going to rise to the top of this type of sport.
What would happen when you would hear that? And of course you didn't take it to heart, but would you get like seething rage inside of you? Did you just like tune it out?
I would get pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Learn to use that for sure as motivation. But as a younger kid, it's tough when you have someone who's older and who supposedly knows a lot more than you, and you're hearing that kind of stuff. That's, as you're older and have more experience, it's easier just to kind of brush that off. But as a young kid, that's tough for sure.
Yeah. That's the stuff, why it's so important to have a good coach or good mentors, because you start to instill that crap into somebody's brain and it becomes the totality of their life. And these people,
Go
ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And having that good coach or the good mentor is so important. I feel so lucky when I do look back on my career. Every step of the way, I can think of one person who was with me at that time, whether it was a family member or a coach or a teammate. There's always someone there who made that next step possible for me. I wouldn't have done it on my own.
That's usually the case, right? That's pretty cool that you're man enough to admit that too, because there's definitely people that say, or would just say like, yeah, I work really hard and pat themselves on the back.
Right. No, a lot of help along the way, starting with my parents, who would drive me 45 minutes each way to go to ski practice. And just always being there to support me. I can think back, I like to tell parents this now because now I work with a lot of parents too, working with junior athletes. One of the first big pivotal moments, I think, in my career that allowed me to continue was when I was young and I was ski racing. And at the same time, I loved to play all sorts of different other sports. And I remember finishing a race, and I probably had a bad race or something like that and was grumpy. And I told my dad, I said, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I think maybe I just want to keep playing basketball. He said, great. Well, that's what you want to do. That's what we'll do. And I look back at that as being such a pivotal moment, because what kids are like, right? If he had told me right then, you're a skier, you're going to keep racing, that's what you're going to do. I probably would have fought him tooth and nail to not ski race anymore.
That's cool. What'd your pop do, or does he do?
My pop works. He worked at a small liberal arts college right here outside of Lake Placid.
Was he a skier too?
No, it's funny. He grew up. He grew up in New York City, and moved up here later in life to be at the college there. And he turned into a skier. Didn't grow up as one, but definitely turned into one.
Okay, so you could teach your dad about the skiing stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My father's not a skier either. Never. I don't think he's ever even once been on skis. And I really appreciate the conversation. We covered a ton of ground. It's a definite honor to be able to visit and pick your brain and share you with our audience. Would love to get out there and see you on the training range at some point. Is there a website or something like that people can visit and learn more about the team? Yeah.
To learn more about the U.S. team, you can go to usbiathlon.org.
Very cool.
Yeah,
and do you have you got a social media page, anything like that?
It's funny. I get asked that a lot, and I don't anymore. As an athlete, I had to do that kind of stuff. And I was, had the Facebook page and it's still there. You can find it. But I unfortunately haven't updated it, I think, since the day I retired.
It's just not your thing.
It's just not my thing. And I know it's all it's what people are into now, and it's great. But for me, I'm just kind of.
You want to go chase that dog around in the woods? I
want to go chase the dog around in the woods. I want to hit the lake and go fishing. And that's my jam.
I dig it, man. I dig it. Some of that stuff's poison. I like social media because we can have this connection with somebody that would otherwise be a stranger, because that's how I found you.
Yeah.
But I think we go too far and lose the human connection and the connection to the natural world too.
Agreed.
I dig it. You guys that have watched, if you dug this podcast, leave a comment. Share it with somebody. If you're an athlete or somebody aspiring to do something big and cool and great, hopefully you learned something here that can propel you to do something cool in your own life. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them and walk the higher line. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.
I said I got me some gunfighter gun, baby. Gunfighter gun, oh, no more gunfighter blues. Made in the USA, amazing lubricity, 100% synthetic, baby. So it's gonna last you longer. So go on CarryTrainer.com and order yourself some gunfighter gun or gunfighter lube to get rid of your gunfighter blues. I said go on and order yourself some gunfighter lube. Yeah!